The theatre of the oppressed describes theatrical forms that the Brazilian theatre practitioner Augusto Boal first elaborated in the 1960s, initially in Brazil and later in Europe. Boal was influenced by the work of the educator and theorist Paulo Freire. Boal's techniques use theatre as means of promoting social and political change. In the theatre of the oppressed, the audience becomes active, such that as spect-actors they explore, show, analyze and transform the reality in which they are living. History. The theatre of the oppressed, a term coined by Augusto Boal, is a series of theatrical analyses and critiques developed in the 1950s. Boal is an avid supporter of utilizing interactive techniques, especially in the context of theatre. Many of his ideas are considered as a new media perspective, despite the relatively early birth of these ideas. Since then, these ideas have been developed more, giving them meaning in a modern-day context. The creation of the theatre of the oppressed is largely based on the idea of dialogue and interaction between audience and performer. Moreover, these ideas have served as a framework for the development and evolution of stronger ideas. Terminology. Joker difficultator much of Augusto Boal's theatrical process requires a neutral party to be at the center of proceedings. This individual is usually called the facilitator. In Boal's literature this role is referred to as the Joker, in reference to the neutrality of the Joker card in a deck of playing cards. In most cases, but not all, this would be a drama workshop leader. This person takes responsibility for the logistics of the process and ensures a fair proceeding, but must never comment upon or intervene in the content of the performance, as that is the province of the spect-actors. Spect-actor. This is a term created by Augusto Boal to describe those engaged in forum theatre. It refers to the dual role of those involved in the process as both spectator and actor, as they both observe and create dramatic meaning and action in any performance. Equally, the term spect-actor can be attributed to the participants in invisible theatre and image theatre. Boal emphasizes the critical need to prevent the isolation of the audience. The term spectator brands the participants as less than human. Hence, is necessary to humanize them, to restore to them their capacity for action in all its fullness. They must also be a subject, an actor on equal plane with those accepted as actors, who in turn must also be spectators. This will eliminate any notions of the ruling class and the theatre solely portraying their ideals while the audience being the passive victims of those images. This way the spectators no longer delegates power to the characters either to think or act in their place. They free themselves. They think and act for themselves. Boal supports the idea that theatre is not revolutionary in itself but is rehearsal of revolution. Major branches of theatre of the oppressed. During the development of theatre of the oppressed, Boal worked with many populations and tried many techniques. These techniques eventually coalesced into different theatrical styles, each using a different process to achieve a different result. Boal often organized these theatrical systems as a tree, with images, sounds and words as the roots, games, image theatre and forum theatre ascending up the trunk, and then other techniques represented as limbs stemming from these. As more TO systems evolved, Boal and others have made slight modifications to which techniques appear on various limbs, but the tree of theatre of the oppressed has mostly remained consistent. Image theatre. Image theatre is a performance technique in which one person, acting as a sculptor, molds one or more people acting as statues, using only touch and resisting the use of words or mirror image modeling. Boal claims this form of theatre to be one of the most stimulating because of its ease of enactment and its remarkable capacity of portraying thought in a concrete form due to the absence of language idiom. Each word has a denotation common for all as well as a connotation that is unique for each individual. Each will have his own interpretation of revolution, and to demonstrate such idea provides a clearer understanding of their intention in definition when shown rather than told. For instance, one can embrace another in many ways. However, the word has the same definition of clasping another person in the arms. Forum theatre. While practicing in South America earlier in his career, Boal would apply simultaneous dramaturgy. In this process, the actors or audience members could stop a performance, often a short scene in which a character was being oppressed in some way. In early forms of simultaneous dramaturgy, the audience could propose any solution, by calling out suggestions to the actors who would improvise the changes on stage. This was an attempt to undo the traditional audience-actor partition and bring audience members into the performance, to have an input into the dramatic action they were watching. Forum theatre was born from simultaneous dramaturgy when, according to Boal, this concept of the spect-actor became a dominant force within Boal's later forum theatre work. The audience were now encouraged to not only imagine change but to actually practice that change, by coming on stage as spect-actors to replace the protagonist and act out an intervention to break the oppression. Through this process, the participant is also able to realize and experience the challenges of achieving the improvements he/she suggested. Thus, Boal's current manifestation of forum theatre is as follows: the actors perform a play with a scripted core, in which an oppression relevant to the audience is played out. After reaching the scripted conclusion, in which the oppressed character, fail to overturn their oppression, the actors begin the production again, although often in a condensed form. At any point during this second performance, any spect-actor may call out "stop" and take the place of the actor portraying the oppressed individual. If and when the oppression has been overthrown by the spect-actors, the production changes again. The spect-actors now have the opportunity to replace the oppressors, and find new ways of challenging the oppressed character. In this way, a more realistic depiction of the oppression can be made by the audience, who are often victims of the oppression. The whole process is designed to be dialectic, coming to a conclusion through the consideration of opposing arguments, rather than didactic, in which the moral argument is one-sided and pushed from the actors with no chance of reply or counter-argument. Boal clarifies that this practice is not intended to show the correct path, but rather to discover all possible paths which may be further examined. The theatre itself is not revolutionary, instead a rehearsal of revolution. The spectators learn much more from the enactment even if done in a fictional manner, since it stimulates the practice of the art in reality. When encountered in reality with a similar situation they've rehearsed in theatre, forum theatre evokes a desire in people to be proactive since they feel much more prepared and confident in resolving the conflict. The practice of this form creates an uneasy sense of incompleteness that seeks fulfillment through real action. Invisible theatre equals a form of theatrical performance that is enacted in a place where people would not normally expect to see one, for example in the street or in a shopping center. The performers attempt to disguise the fact that it is a performance from those who observe and who may choose to participate in it, encouraging the spectators to view it as a real event. The Brazilian theatre practitioner Augusto Boal and Panagiotis Asimakopoulos developed the form during his time in Argentina in the 1970s as part of his Theatre of the Oppressed, which focused on oppression and social issues. Newspaper theatre a system of techniques devised to give the audience a way to transform daily news articles or any non-dramatic pieces to theatrical scene. The strategies are as follows: simple reading, news item read, detached from the context of the newspaper. Crossed reading, two news items are read in alternating form, complementing or contrasting each other in a new dimension. Complementary reading, information generally omitted by the ruling class are added to the news. Rhythmical reading, article is read to a rhythm, so it acts as a critical filter of the news, revealing the true content initially concealed in the newspaper. Parallel action, actors mimic the actions as the news is being read. One hears the news and watches its visual complement. Improvisation, news is improvised on stage to exploit all its variants and possibilities. Historical, data occurred from historical moments, events in other countries, or in social systems are added to the news. Reinforcement, article is read accompanied by songs, slides, or publicity materials. Concretion of the abstract, abstract content in news is made concrete on stage, that is hunger, unemployment, etc. Text out of context, news is presented out of context in which it was originally published. Rainbow of desire Rainbow of desire is a technique and also a family of techniques explained by Boal in his book of the same name. Rainbow techniques stem from image theatre and tend to focus on forms of internalized oppression played out by a protagonist in relation to an antagonist. While in his earlier work Boal eschewed the use of theatre of the oppressed as drama therapy, he later began to espouse these more introspective techniques as a form of theatre and therapy. Legislative theatre. When Boal was a vereador in Rio de Janeiro, he created a new form of theatre called legislative theatre to give his voters the opportunity to voice their opinions. The objective is to open up a dialogue between citizens and institutional entities so that there is a flow of power between both groups. Boal calls this type of legislative process a transitive democracy, which lies in between direct democracy and delegate democracy. It is similar to forum theatre. However, the subject of the production is based on a proposed law to be passed. Spect-actors may take the stage and express their opinions, thereby helping with the creation of new laws. Some 13 laws were created through legislative theatre during Boal's time in government. The technique has since been used overseas in countries including Canada and the United Kingdom. Other techniques. Analytical theatre. A story is told by one of the participants and immediately the actors improvise it. Afterward each character is broken down into their social roles and the participants are asked to choose a physical object to symbolize each role. For instance, for one community the symbol for the head of the family may be a piggy bank, since that individual is the one who controls the finances. Having analyzed the characters, a fresh attempt to tell the story is made, however this time removing some of the symbols from each character, and consequently some social roles as well. For example, the story would be perceived differently if the robber had the police uniform and the hostage possessed a revolver. Through this method, the participants will realize that human actions are not the exclusive and primitive result of human psychology. The individual speaks of their class as well. Breaking repression. Boal explains that the technique of breaking repression involves asking the participant to remember a particular moment when he or she felt especially repressed, accepted it, and submitted to act in a manner contrary to his or her own desires. It is necessary, he explains, that the choice is a particular incident rather than a general sense of oppression. The participant describes that incident, which is then reconstructed and reenacted with other participants of his choosing. This performance is repeated, except that this time the repressed is asked to fight to impose his or her will while the others involved are invited to maintain the repression. The conflict that results helps to measure the possibility one has to resist in situations where one fails to do so, as well as to measure the true strength of the enemy. Having rehearsed a resistance to oppression prepares the individual to resist effectively in similar situations that may be encountered in the future. Repression. 349, Boal states that the process to be realized in doing this type of theatre is the one that ascends from the phenomenon toward the law. From the phenomena presented in the plot toward the social laws that govern those phenomena. Repression. 349. Photoromance. Photoromance is a romantic narrative illustrated with sequential photographs in the style of a comic strip, usually published in magazines and such. The technique involves introducing to the participants the general plot without revealing the source of the photoromance. Then, the participants are asked to act out the story, which is then compared to the actual story as described in the source. The differences are discussed thereafter. A particular story interpreted and acted out may be a predictable, pathetic one, however at the same time this result serves as a magnificent example of ideological insight. Boal argues that if they first act out the story themselves then afterwards read the original version, the participants will no longer assume a passive, expectant attitude, but instead a critical, comparative one. They as well be prepared to detect the poison infiltrating the pages of those photo stories, or the comics and other forms of cultural and ideological domination. This technique is also useful to analyze television programs, a dominant source of poison directed against the people. Rituals and masks. This technique attempts to reveal the ideological superstructure of a society in the form of its rituals. Rituals in this sense describes the patterns of human relationships and the masks of behavior that those patterns impose on the participants according to the roles that they play in society. For example, a man goes to a priest to confess his sins. Despite the individual identities of the man and priest, the pattern of behavior will remain the same as other examples of this interaction. This will cause different scenarios to play out even though the confession is the same. Boal argues that this is an extraordinarily rich technique that has many variants. For example, the same ritual may be explored by its participants exchanging masks, or it may be enacted by people from different social classes. Organizations. International Theatre of the Oppressed organization inspired by Augusto Boal, this organization links other theatre of the oppressed groups to one another. The idea is that others will help groups organize themselves and create new centers for theaters of the oppressed. There are links to other organizations involved with this project, so anyone can contact anyone else involved. This online organization allows others to share information about the theater of the oppressed. The largest single organization in the theater of the oppressed network is Jnana Sanskriti. Set up by Sanjoy Ganguly in the Sundarbans, a rural area outside Calcutta in the Bay of Bengal, Jnana Sanskriti has a membership of over 40,000, 30 theatre teams, and an impressive record of art and activism which has resulted in major improvements in health, infrastructure, welfare benefits, education and social awareness through the region. Boal's ideas have been widely accepted and used by theatre groups in Mozambique after the end of the civil war in 1992 to explain the need for reconciliation and to discuss topics such as avoiding landmines, voting in the first democratic elections and the rights of peasants under the new land law. Grupo de Teatro dos Oprimidos, Maputo was founded in 2001 after Alvin Cossa spent 6 months studying theatre methodology in Rio de Janeiro by a grant from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. It has presented plays such as O Meu Marido Está Nega, documented as a film by Roga copyright Rio Manjate, which discusses HIV/AIDS avoidance and treatment. This play is presented in public places, markets, schools and businesses, and the public is invited to attend and present their own solutions to the unequal power relations shown in the play. The result is more effective than a lecture in Portuguese or distribution of written material to a largely illiterate population. Centre for Community Dialogue and Change Centre for Community Dialogue and Change is an organisation based in Bengaluru, India, which is dedicated to the promotion of theatre of the oppressed chiefly in education as well as medical humanities. CCDC has conducted many workshops among diverse population in India as well as abroad. Medical Humanities Group, UCMS Infinite Ability, the Disability Special Interest Group within the Medical Humanities Group of University College of Medical Sciences, Delhi, India organised the first ever Theatre of the Oppressed workshop for medical students. See also, Theatre Pedagogy, Drama Therapy, Bertolt Brecht, Luster 1/4 CKE, Forum Theatre, Invisible Theatre, Cardboard Citizens, Crowdsourcing, Jennifer S. Hartley. References. Rogers, Mandy. MacBook to Open Tonight. Red and Black 208, Wardrip Ruin, Noah and Nick Montfort, eds. The New Media Reader. Cambridge, MIT Press, 2003. ISBN 0-262-23227-8. Augusto, Boal. Theatre of the Oppressed. New York, Theatre Communications Group. ISBN 0-930452-49-6. External links, Glossary of Theatre of the Oppressed Terminology, Pedagogy in Theatre of the Oppressed Incorporated PTO holds the largest annual Theatre of the Oppressed conference, the Forum Project, Sliding Scale Theatre of the Oppressed Training and Facilitation, International Theatre of the Oppressed Organisation, Cardboard Citizens, the UK's leading practitioners in Theatre of the Oppressed Training, Gioia Cooperativa Sociale, Centro di Ricerca e Sperimentazione Teatrali sui Metodi Boal Friuli, Italy. Partecipat Rome Marseille, Preview of Theatre of the Oppressed Centre for Community Dialogue and Change, India, Breaking Patterns, creating change, conducting theatre of the oppressed workshops and research especially in education and healthcare.